The general consensus is that children start their lives as being innocent, pure. As they grow older and learn more about the world, they lose that innocence, and little by little, mistake by mistake, year by year, they become corrupt. And the mark of adulthood, of maturity, is a total loss of that purity and innocence from early childhood. It remains difficult to tell whether this is just human nature or whether the world we live in is what causes the corruption. I don't suppose it matters much to most people that the world we live in now was created by humans to begin with, as most people would simply argue that it wasn't their own personal doing. So, whether it is the world or whether it is humanity that corrupts over time by nature is unclear. What we know for sure is that this unfortunate process happens to the best of us and seemingly cannot be escaped. And that brings us to the story of Blake. The big question would be where to start the story of Blake. The obvious would be at the date of his birth, though that might not be quite as dramatic as the rest of his life. There is the fact that he was, for all intents and purposes, at his most malicious during that time, but there really is only so much damage that a literal infant can do if given the chance. It might be more accurate to state that the height of his evil was around the age of 5, when his mind had begun to develop and he had more and better access and ability to do, for better or worse, whatever he wanted to. It was the age where he had begun to notice girls and made the very quick conclusion that older women were more to his taste. It was also at this age where he discovered the concept of sadism, and where the hatred which he had always held and felt in his heart was something he could finally describe in words, and describe them he did, to everyone and anyone that had ears. He was a notorious bully, frequently sent to either the principal's office or the head of the orphanage he had been abandoned to. At the ripe old age of 2.5, his parents had finally given up hope that the aggressive infant would ever be reformed, assuming that he would only get worse as he grew older. On the surface, that did appear to be the case. The orphanage he was sent to had been heavily religious. The more they tried to push it on him, the more he rebelled. It was mandatory for all the children to go to church on Sundays. The staff soon found that getting him to sit still in church was going to be no easy task. In the end, they had resorted to pushing him to the back room, where new mothers sat with their babies in order to avoid the noise bothering the rest of the people. Even this proved to be a failure, as Blake would only begin taking out his aggression on the helpless babies whenever they started crying, terrifying and infuriating the mothers. So, whenever there was a new mother, they took him out of church. They also could not send him to Sunday school with the other orphans, as he would only terrorize the teacher and children alike. Finally, they happened upon the only thing that seemed to help, other than just removing Blake from all religious gatherings altogether, which was to have a personal teacher for him. As soon as the man had met Blake, he knew that it would take his entire life's devotion to take care of him. He was a volunteer at the church, having no need for money after a large inheritance from a wealthy relative. So the man essentially devoted his life to a singular child, giving him lessons in his own time, alone in the small Sunday school room every week after the other children had received their lessons. The only saving grace was that in spite of all his outbursts and clear hatred for everyone around him, Blake seemed to have a deep fascination with the Bible and the stories the man would prepare for him every Sunday morning. The man took pity on Blake, but made no mistake in trying to convince himself that the boy was innocent. He would have adopted him had it not been for the fact that he was violent, and though he could easily enough defend himself, he had a wife and a young child of his own, and would not for the life of him put them in harm's way. He had enough foresight to see that once Blake got older and stronger, he would be able to do more damage and possibly even overpower many of the adults in charge of taking care of him. The man eventually became a priest, though he still devoted his time to Blake. Still, he did not believe Blake would ever improve, and as everyone else, assumed that he would get worse with age. In spite of this, he still decided that it was worthwhile to make sure that he gave the young boy every possible opportunity to turn his life around, and every possible chance to make him realize his mistakes. He knew for as long as he was still a child, Blake would never run out of second chances. he would need every last one of them. However, no one really kept track of this. No one was really able to. No one but Blake himself. He didn't immediately decide to do so. It didn't initially occur to him that he might grow into a better person over the years. He certainly had no intention of any such thing. But there had been a turning point in his life, a small but infinitely significant shift that had made him come to the realization that, whether he meant to or not, he was getting better. Thank you for listening and watching. All links and references are in the description below.